I have these carrots that I made off of some spindles last year. And then I drilled some holes, added the greenery. You can see I think I tried to do a dark wax. I don't know. I didn't do a very good job, in my opinion. Then I tried to replicate that, doing some with a milk paint. I think this is like autumn something. It's a fusion milk paint. And I didn't think it was like the right tone. And as you can see, like the milk, I didn't do a great job with the milk paint mixture. So I still have some leftover, what is this? Chestnut Mare. And this is from Sonnet's Maker's Box. And I'm just going to give these a quick coat. They already have that texture from the milk paint. And this fusion paint's an all-in-one paint, so this should be a really quick project.
In today's video, we will be working on a variety of thrift flips, DIYs, anything that I can find in my stash, really, but the theme is all things spring. This is part of a collaboration hosted by Sonnet from Sonnet's Garden Blooms and includes a variety of creatives who have also created some amazing videos for you. So once you're done with this video, make sure to look for the link below in my description box. All right, let's get going.
You might remember this basket. This was in a big bundle of basket upcycles I did on my channel. I want to kind of, I don't know, fix it up a little bit and then relist it. And there's two things I want to do. I think I was originally not going to paint it, but as I look at it, I feel like I should. I feel like I should just make everything one color. And then I want to add this sign that I made. All right, I decided on Bellwood, which is a fusion all-in-one paint. And I'm going to lightly mist my basket prior to painting just to allow the paint to run a little bit more smoothly.
I gave the basket 2 coats inside, out, and underneath, and after that dried, I came back with some Gorilla Super Glue and attached that little sign that I had created. After I had it glued on, I did try to use my clamp to clamp down the piece to hold it on until it dried thoroughly, but it would not clamp. So here's the solution I came up with. I laid a book underneath, and then I put a bunch of tools on the inside to weigh down that basket. Since I kind of went crazy making a ton of spindle carrots, I decided to paint a smaller basket for some of the smaller carrots that I created. I'm using the same color and the same method that I used on that larger basket. I misted the basket first and then I painted it in that color Bellwood. The color that was on there previously I believe was Conservatory, but I wanted to give it a spring refresh. For our next project, I have this metal box that I got, I believe, off of a Whatnot sale. I got it last summer and I love the box. It does not latch though when you close it. So I'm going to start by painting it in this gorgeous blue. This is a Dixie Belle chalk paint called Antebellum Blue. And I'm going to give the entire outside of this box this paint job. And then I'm going to use a different color for the inside, but we'll get to that in a second. This little set of adorable birds is called Nestled Whispers. This is one sheet of this transfer set by Redesign with Prima, and I am going to be cutting it up and transferring it onto different parts of this box to embellish it. Once I decide where I want to position that transfer, I'm going to peel the back sheet off and then place it down and allowing it to kind of press into that dry paint, and I'm going to be using a transfer stick to transfer it on. I like starting on corners or edges just because sometimes it's a little easier to get that transfer off of the carrier sheet, but overall it is a very easy transfer to use. I use that same Bellwood and paint the inside of the box with 2 coats of this color and allow it to fully dry before closing the box again. I've had issues in the past with accidentally sealing my boxes shut permanently, and I just did not want that to happen today. I really liked how the inside of the box looked, but I felt like the outside was still a little too dark or unfinished. I couldn't figure out, it just didn't look right to me. So I brought it back downstairs to my craft room and I grabbed some white wax and covered the entire box in white wax, pulling back the excess. For my next project, I went over to my friend Cindy's website, CNC DIY Factory, and I picked up a bundle of frames. She creates these customizable frames in a variety of sizes, and you can even choose bundles. I ended up grabbing this adorable bundle for a very reasonable cost, and I'm going to upcycle 2 of them in this next part of the video. As you can see, I used my completely coral Sweet Pickins milk paint that I gotten from Sonnet's Maker's Box this past month, and I was planning on sealing all of them in a clear wax, but then I thought I would do a little experimenting to see what different types of finishes look like on these frames. I grabbed the little bunny that Sonnet had put in her maker's box as a free gift to use for one of my frames. That was going to be a for sure thing for one of these 4 frames. But then I went into my stash and grabbed a bunch of other napkins that I have, and I wanted to kind of create a different look for each of them, and that's how I came up with the idea to use different finishes. I did check each of my napkins and made sure that I removed any of the extra plies that they have before I got started with decoupage. I will say I think most of them were 2-ply. I believe the bunny that Sonnet sent was a 3-ply napkin. Cindy's wood frame bundles come with these wood planks that are already shaped and perfect for the size of the frame that they come with. And I'm just going to give each of them 2 coats of a budget-friendly white paint to create my background that I'm going to be using for decoupage. Once that paint was dry, I grabbed my liquid patina and I I put the liquid patina on each of my frame backers and allowed the liquid patina to completely dry because I'm going to be using the iron-on method for my napkins. Once that liquid patina was fully dry, I grabbed my napkins, laid them on top of each of those backers, and ironed on the corresponding napkin that I wanted for the frame. One thing I really like about this method is I can sand down the sides right after I'm done ironing. I don't have to wait for it to dry because it's pretty much already dry. So your wait time is actually going to be before you do the ironing and decoupaging on rather than after, which is what we would typically do when we use other rice paper or decoupage papers. You kind of decoupage it on, let it dry, then sand down the excess. This one does not require that wait time at the end. For the bunny frame, I chose a clear wax first and then came back over with a white wax to kind of soften that color a little bit. I wanted to bring out some more detail into this picture because I felt like it was very plain with just that white background. So I am using some of the ephemeral type stamps from IOD and just placing them on in various places to kind of just add a little bit more detail, giving this project a much more finished look. The other rectangle frame, I wanted to try out the tongue oil, which is a new product that I recently got, which I know to be perfect for milk paint. It is also food safe, and obviously I don't need to worry about that for the frame, but I just wanted to try it to see what it looked like finished. I really liked the finish on this piece, and this is the one that I'll be putting with the napkin that is more summer-like. So I actually haven't finished this project completely yet, but I wanted to kind of show you some different finishes, and that's why I included it here. For the square frame that has the rooster, I am going to be using dark wax over clear wax to darken the color a little bit. You will notice that this is not the frame that I end up using with the rooster. I did both of the square frames in this dark wax mixture, but I went in a different direction with the smaller of the 2 frames. For the rooster napkin, I gave the napkin just a couple of touches of a crackle stamp where it was white. And now I'm going to be using some antiquing glaze. And you can see I'm starting out very lightly because I was nervous about ruining the napkin. But once I got confident, I realized that it was okay to go ahead and cover the entire piece with that glaze. Once I had that front fully covered, I came back with just a little rag and dabbed off the excess. I then grabbed one of my little memes that I created specifically for this rooster, and I am dabbing some Type on Quick and Thick onto the back, you'll see that I added a couple of other little pieces of wood scraps just to raise up the sign a little bit, to give it a little bit more dimension on the inside of that frame. I did decide to come back and add some antiquing glaze to the white frame. Here's a look at both of those projects. For our next project, I have this wooden box that I got from Sammy's website at Unicorn Dust Designs, and I'm going to start by removing all of the hardware from this box. The inside of the box had this spot that was a bunch of, I think it must have been red chalk paint, and so I tried to clean it off and then ended up sanding it down to get it all the way off of that box. Next, I got my Gorilla wood filler and filled in any of the spaces on the box where there was a notable gap in between the two pieces of wood. This was mainly on the sides and then on the bottom of the box. Once I did this, I set it aside for about a half an hour to allow that wood filler to dry, and then I came back and sanded it down. Here's that box now that it has been sanded down. Everything is flush and ready for paint. I'm going to be using drop cloth, which is a Dixie Belle chalk paint, and giving the outside of the box and the bottom 2 good coats of this paint. I did initially start out doing more of a dry brush or a heavy dry brush technique with a chip brush, but then I decided I would be using some paint inlays, so I really wasn't worried about trying to create the dry brush effect anymore. Once those 2 coats were dry, I came back with a 3rd coat, and now I'm going to be preparing for my inlay. I'm misting my paint inlays that I will be using, and then I'm going to paint on a coat of that Dixie Belle drop cloth and then lay my paint inlay right into that wet paint to allow it to set. I do use a microfiber cloth to kind of dampen up or soak up any of the excess water that is on top of that paint inlay. I'm going to repeat that process all around the outside of the box, putting 2 different little embellishments on each side. So there's some bunnies, I believe there's a lamb, and there is a chick maybe, or a hen. And I am not as worried about color, except for the fact that I decided not to use the lighter pink of all of these options. I stuck with the one that I believe is more like a farm fresh greenish blue color, and then these ones that are that kind of more of a brown taupey color. I set everything aside to dry for a good hour, and now I'm coming back and using a damp cloth to kind of reactivate the backer sheet on that paint inlay and slowly peel up that sheet to reveal the paint inlay underneath. What I will say is this specific one gave me a little bit of trouble. I had to mist it quite a bit before it was finally able to peel back and reveal.
Yesterday there was sun and there was rain, beauty in the mundane, and as the light startled our eyes, we let go.
Once I had that outside of the box complete, I came back and painted the inside of the box with the Bellwood that we used at the beginning of today's projects. I gave it 2 coats all over the inside of the box and on the edges across the top. I used Rust-Oleum Clear Matte Spray Sealer to seal the outside of the box. The inside of the box did not need to be sealed. And now I'm coming in with some IOD Stone Gray ink and a crackle stamp, and just putting bits and pieces of that crackle stamp all over the outside of the box.
Easy on our tiptoes.
The last step was to seal the entire inside and outside of this box with this Van Dyke Antiquing Glaze by Dixie Belle. I worked in sections, covering the entire side of a box and then slowly dabbing it back. I wiped in some places and dabbed in others just to create a variety of texture and dimension.
Reaching for the grand, as willows align, we lose track
For our last project today, I have these wood tags that I have cut out using my laser cutter. They are thicker and larger than probably other ones I have found. And I'm going to start by painting them in two white paints that are a little bit different in shade. The first two I have painted in Crinoline, which is a DIY paint that's got a creamier kind of tone to it. And the other two I just painted with a more stark white paint. I believe this is Parchment by Fusion. For the one that was painted in Parchment, once that paint was dry, I grabbed my China Blue IOD ink and the new stamp set, Brambles and Berries, and I'm going to be stamping one of those stamps onto the side of my tag. For the tag painted in Crinoline, I used two other little vines from that same stamp set, as well as a Stays-On ink color called Timber. It is a gorgeous brown. I am making these two stamps a very unique and a little bit different than what you might expect, and I'm only going to be doing two of them today. The other two you will see in another video later this week. I grabbed some 220 grit sandpaper to sand the edges of my tag and give this, especially this blue one, a little bit more of a distressed look. I felt that that would look good for what I have planned for it. I ended up deciding to do the same just around the edges of that other tag that was painted in Crinoline with the brown vines. I have these drawer pulls that have been in my stash for quite a while, and I decided to turn them upside down and put them onto these tags to almost create a little planter pot on my tags. Rather than using glue, I decided to make this a little bit more permanent, and I had these tiny little screws. They are not the easiest to get in, but I was able to do it after fidgeting with it for a little while. Now to embellish these little tags, I grabbed some Spanish moss and I am going to use some hot glue just to ensure that it stays in there. These are very shallow little planters, so I want to make sure that there is a way for everything to stay together, especially when you're working with Spanish moss, which is very, very messy. Once I had that down inside of my little handmade planter, I came back with some sprigs of lavender and stuck them in. I believe I didn't end up hot gluing these because they fit perfectly inside and did not wiggle or move. I finished this first one up with some thicker twine that I knotted around the hole that I had created on the tag. For my white and blue tag, I used the same Spanish moss in the base of it and then added some greenery instead. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to check out the playlist in my description box for a lot more spring inspiration. Have a wonderful week. I'll see you soon.